8:30 in the morning. Why are you texting me?
Yo, I got a great idea for the next episode.
What's that?
Yo, have you ever made biscuits and gravy?
I've never done it, but I can give it a try.
Dude, my dad did it every Sunday. We should do that for sure.
Damn, that sounds good. When do you want to start? Wait, where are you?
Oh, bro, I'm ready. I'm already ready.
Biscuits and gravy time!
I'm gonna need to finish this coffee. Welcome to Cooking with Bad Boys episode 2. As you know, as John jumped through my door like the Kool-Aid man,
Oh yeah!
we're gonna be cooking up some biscuits and gravy and putting our own twist to it. I've never made biscuits and gravy, so we're gonna be using John's recipe, or rather John's dad's recipe, so you can get a little bit of taste of home. I don't have any ingredients, so we're gonna have to make a quick stop at our local grocery store. And before we do that, I'm gonna need to finish this much needed coffee. See you there. So for our homemade biscuits and gravy recipe, it calls for 2 parts. Ingredients for the biscuits and ingredients for the gravy. It is going to include butter, self-rising flour to save us some steps, buttermilk for that extra flavor, and last but not least, parchment paper. Now for the fun part, the sausage gravy. You're going to need some breakfast sausage. You're also going to need some all-purpose flour, some milk, more butter, spices of your choosing, and last but not least, salt and pepper to taste. And most importantly, the bad boy ingredient, Hennessy.
Bruh.
So the secret sauce to making the perfect biscuits is actually freezing your butter. To make sure the fat's distributed evenly, we're going to be using a cheese grater using the large holes. The reason why you actually want to do this is so the butter can then be distributed pretty evenly across every single bite, creating that flaky, buttery goodness that you're familiar with in your favorite biscuits that you've ever eaten. Now we've got the butter grated, and we're going to mix 2.5 cups of self-rising flour into a big bowl, and making sure we get this buttery goodness in here. Don't waste the butter because this is the best part of biscuits. And as you can see, it is starting to melt, unfortunately. So before we actually get the dough ready, we're gonna make sure that this flour and butter mixture is a lot colder than what it is currently. Who would have thought, John? Baking with Bad Boys.
Country edition.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna drop this in the freezer for 10 minutes, and then once it is cold again, we'll get the dough finalized. So I know I mentioned that a frozen stick of butter was the secret sauce, but a little Hennessy always helps.
Bottles on me, long as someone drink it.
John?
Making sure the young money ship is never sinking.
Looks like the butter and flour mixture is ready to go. So as I mentioned, we kept this in there for about 10 minutes. And now we're gonna mix our 1 cup of chilled buttermilk into the flour and butter mixture. You're gonna wanna just incorporate it very, very slowly so the mixture is in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour in the rest of the buttermilk and make sure that I'm not mixing it too much, but not mixing it too less. So you're gonna wanna just dust your surface here to make sure the dough doesn't stick. And now we're gonna actually work with putting in the dough on the surface area. So before we actually start rolling, we're gonna just put it and compress it together so it's easier to work with. Fortunately, I don't have a rolling pin as I'm very unprepared. So as a substitution, I do have an empty bottle from last night. We're gonna wanna make sure to sprinkle on some more flour onto your substitute rolling pin so it doesn't actually stick. So now we're gonna have to actually work through this pretty fast because we don't want that butter to melt before it goes into the oven. What you're gonna wanna do is actually roll it into a rectangle. As you can see, it's looking pretty good for our first roll. After each roll, you're gonna wanna fold it up, flip it back into place, and then roll it out again. You're only gonna wanna do this about 5 times to create additional layers, which results in the flaky goodness that you're familiar with. So we are gonna do something a little bit controversial here. I don't have a biscuit cutter, and that's probably not a surprise to any of our viewers, but in this case, we're actually gonna cut it in squares. Usually with a biscuit cutter, you'll have to re-roll and use the spare dough that you have left over to create additional biscuits. In this case, everything is gonna be made evenly, and we'll be able to not waste any dough. Yo, John, come take a look at these layers, man.
Oh, those look good.
So we've got the oven preheated at 475. Biscuits are on the baking sheet, touching so they rise. We're gonna drop this in here right now. Leave it in here for about 15 minutes or until golden brown, and we'll be good to go. Next, we're gonna tackle the gravy. Get in there, John. Look at that. Golden brown. That's looking nice. What do you think, John? Should we give this a flake test? Let's get it. I've never made biscuits before. I'm happy we did.
Oh my God, bro.
You're gonna wanna start cooking this and make sure you cook it all the way through so it's not kind of grimy and slimy and it's got a nice brown to it. So as you're actually cooking this, how we're switching up John's dad's biscuit recipe, biscuit and gravy recipe, is by adding a Cajun twist to it. So I'm gonna drop in the spices here, and it is a teaspoon of, we added some Cajun spices, about a teaspoon of that. We added a half teaspoon of smoked paprika, and then also a 4th teaspoon of cayenne pepper to get
good.
that kick. All right, so the meat's almost nearly ready. John, if you want to take a look at a closer look, the sausage is a nice brown. So now that we transfer the meat into a bowl, we still have a lot of the grease on the pan, and we're gonna add 3 tablespoons of butter on medium heat. As soon as it melts, we're gonna add in that flour, and we're gonna whisk for a minute before we start adding in the whole milk. So now I'm gonna add in the flour. Try to get your sifter if you can. Sift it in there to prevent the clumps. And while this is happening, I'm constantly whisking it to create the mixture of the flour and the butter. We're trying to get those clumps out of there. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna be adding in the whole milk. This is 2.5 cups of whole milk, and we're doing this very slowly. We are going to reduce our heat just slightly, just under medium, and as we're doing this, we're constantly whisking. And the idea behind it is this is the base for the gravy before actually adding in the sausage. And we want to make sure the consistency is that of gravy and not mashed potatoes. So I'm probably going to add a little bit more salt to taste again. If you are cognizant about sodium, definitely don't use as much salt as we are, but more salt the better for flavor. Thickness is improving, and the number one thing for a good country gravy is a ton of black pepper. So one little spoon test that you can actually do at home is you put the back of your spoon in there, get some gravy on there, and then if you swipe your finger down and the streak remains, consistency is ready to go. All right, cool. We're gonna add the meat back in. Enough about me talking. John, let's get to the cool shit. Well, thank you for watching today's episode of Cooking with Bad Boys. Homemade biscuits and gravy, country style, with a Cajun Cooking with Bad Boys twist. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, please leave them below. If you'd like to subscribe, and comment your feedback, we'd really appreciate that. Again, thank you again for watching episode 2. See you at episode 3.